Okay. Here now, Marc Lotter, former press secretary to Vice President Pence, who I probably imagine never thought that he would be talking about this topic, but she was hired by the White House for a year, so she was there. And Mark, I want to also show you Joy Behar on The View, because this is pretty priceless as well. Watch this.
It's one thing to talk to Jesus. It's another thing when Jesus talks to you.
Exactly.
Okay, well,
That's different.
that's different. That's called mental illness, if I'm not correct.
But I think...
Hearing voices. My question is, can he talk to Mary Magdalene without his wife in the room?
Wow. Mark, what do you think?
Well, let me tell you my view. I think before the break you said that Omarosa had a story to tell. I think she more has a story she wants to sell. And I'll be honest with you here. I'm not aware of any meeting or significant interaction she has ever had with the Vice President of the United States. Just because you say something on reality TV doesn't mean it has anything to do with reality.
So the word is that she was removed. She was fired from her job at the White House because she was using the car service, which is supposed to be reserved for emergencies, pretty much as her daily chauffeur to get her back and forth from work, right?
I mean, I read those accounts today. I'm not aware of them, but that's a big no-no. That car service is there to take some of the top senior White House aides to meetings that they may have on Capitol Hill. It gets them to places, but it is not a service to take you to and from your home.
I mean, Piers Morgan was asked about her today. He wrote a piece about her, actually. They had done The Apprentice together. He says that she offered him a showmance, that they would have sex during The Apprentice, while the show was underway, and that they would make a lot of money off of that. I guess the thing that is raised when a lot of people look at this story, and I want to ask you about Rob Porter as well, is the judgment of having this person in the White House for 12 months, working with her own office in the West Wing.
Well, she was brought in to be the liaison to help connect the divide and do communications for the Office of Public Liaison, which does outreach on behalf of the administration to various political groups and to minorities. And she didn't last very long at it, and many groups actually celebrated when she was let go. And so it's an unfortunate that that's the way she's chosen to go out. Obviously, I left the White House, under different circumstances, but I'm proud to talk about my service and what the president and vice president are still doing to make America great again. And I just find it really just disgusting that she's just trying to profit off of it.
Well, I have a feeling we haven't heard the last from Omarosa, and she will tell her story, no doubt. What about in terms of General John Kelly? There's so much discussion about how he handled this Rob Porter situation. And today, we heard from Anthony Scaramucci, who I think was the first person that John Kelly fired. He said, based on FBI testimony, White House Chief of Staff John Kelly almost certainly knew about credible allegations of domestic abuse against Rob Porter at least 6 months ago, then recently forced others to lie about that timeline. Inexcusable. Kelly must resign, says Anthony Scaramucci. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, Anthony is someone who has some very strong opinions and voices them often. And make no mistake, there's only one person in the world who's going to decide who the White House Chief of Staff is. And President Donald Trump still has confidence and faith in General John Kelly to do that job. And so, I mean, there's a lot of people out there trying to read between tea leaves in terms of what this means and what that means. At the end of the day, Rob is gone. John Kelly continues to serve as the White House Chief of Staff, and I think a lot of people in the White House.
I mean, do you have faith in him as someone who worked in this administration? Do you think that President Trump should keep John Kelly in that job?
I do, and I'll tell you, I was there when the transition was made between the former chief of staff and General Kelly, and the focus that he brought to the staff, the inspiration that he brought to the staff from his decades of service to our country. He is a formidable leader. He makes sure that people are marching in the right direction in service of the president. I'm not going to defend. I don't know the behind the scenes in terms of all of these kinds of recent issues, but I can tell you he shares the focus of the president to move this country forward. And as long as the president wants him to serve as his chief of staff, I think he's the choice.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. Thank you very much, Mark. Good to see you tonight.
Martha.